best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. Is the comic industry doing great? Doing terrible? Here's the thing. Who cares? Seriously, who cares? This has become an absolutely pointless argument where there's no winner and everybody makes up the rules for what the definition is on a regular basis, and I'm not even sure what anybody is playing for at this point. That's the aggravating thing. So there's a conversation I got sent to me. Tim Seeley, Ron Mars, Fabian Nacenta are all talking, and it's one of those that you've seen this before. You know, Tim Seeley's like, comic audience is gigantic. You need to read the article because we need to make superheroes for all these readers. Now, Seeley is basically saying read an article. That's his point. He's not necessarily saying, you know, like this owns the right wing or he's just basically saying people need to read this article. In fact, in many ways, and I don't know if this is a point he was making or not, but his comment is kind of along the lines of, hey, there does seem to be a lot of people who are interested in the larger comic book market. And the article he's referring to is the one from The Beat, where they talk about the amount of graphic novels being sold. And Marvel and DC are by and large absent on that list, but things like manga and things like Scholastic and things like the indies are picking up. I was in a Barnes & Noble, and, you know, hey, for all the people out there who's like, Western comics are dying, guess what? Barnes & Noble has expanded from 3 shelves to 7 shelves of U.S. Western-based, not manga, Western-based graphic novels in their store. That's growth. It's more than double what they had before. Now, the catch was that only 3 of the 7 shelves were Marvel, DC, and Image. 4 of the shelves were indie graphic novels. It was quite striking to see a bunch of companies I've never heard of or rarely heard of all over there. What does that tell you? It tells you people are into this market. It tells you things are growing, but they are not growing for the incumbents. Okay, so maybe Seeley is kind of referring to that. He goes, we need to make superhero books for these readers yesterday. Yeah, you do. He's correct. I no lies detected. You absolutely do. Ramars responded saying, but Tim, unless comics are made for me, tailored to my specific taste, the entire industry will fail. Everybody knows this. And then Fabian comes in and goes, the book I don't like was not meant for the 44-year-old man boy. It means the industry has failed. It's over. So they're going in with the comic industry isn't failing. It's doing great. This is the fallacy of this argument because, yes, depending on how you do the math, the comic industry is doing wonderfully. Or, depending on if you do the math a different way, the comic industry is doing poorly. Now, the thing is, everybody knows this. If not mentally, emotionally. Everybody knows that there's different ways to look at this thing. Only a true either imbecile or liar would claim otherwise. So, for me, I think as long as we're not agreeing at all on what makes the comics industry good or bad, as long as everybody's disagreeing about what the proof and the facts are, nobody's going to get anywhere. So I have to go, all right, I'm going to judge it by my criteria. What's my criteria if it's doing well or not? Well, number one, are people in comics getting job opportunities and able to live healthy, reasonable lives without wondering where the next gig is going to come from? To me, that's the definition of a healthy industry, be it insurance, medicine, legal. I'll frame it up this way. If you go to college and get a medical degree and you successfully get that degree, there's a good chance you're going to have a good job, that you will actually become somebody in the medical profession and there's plenty of job opportunities for you. If you go and get a software engineering degree, right now, people will bend over backwards to hire you. A lot of places in the Pacific Northwest are hiring software engineers with a starting base salary of $170,000 a year. People coming right out of college. That's what they're making. So if you go get that degree, you have a reasonable expectation, unless you're some kind of crazy maniac, you will find work and you're not really going to have to worry about, does my job, will it exist 3 months later? The comic book industry does not have that situation going on. People who study, work hard to be a part of it, they do not have that job security. They do not have that feeling of, whether they're going to continue to get paid, be able to feed themselves or not. Now, you might say, and you'd be correct, the comic industry hasn't been like that in forever. I understand that. The question was, is this a healthy, successful industry? And if I'm using that criteria, the criteria I just outlined, meaning if you go into it, you have a reasonable expectation if you work hard, you will get paid and do well, the answer is no. A lot of comic professionals who had careers, good careers, are having to do GoFundMe's because they broke their arm or their apartment flooded, and they're having to beg for money to make that happen because the industry is unstable enough or doesn't have enough funding to take care of basic health and life needs. To me, I cannot with a straight face say the comic industry is doing great when there's a number of people within the comic industry struggling to make ends meet, having to have a second job or a third job. Now, when I say that, that's not my way of like pointing at the comic industry and laughing, saying, you big dumbasses. That's my way of saying, hey, look, work still needs to be done here because we do not have a stable job market. We don't have a stable place for people to go. So that's one criteria I have. The other one I would say, if I'm gauging kind of the success, health of the comic industry, it is, it's purely the product. Where is the product being sold? Do we have a 10-year horizon for where the product can be found? Is there, do we see it as an expansion market where more distribution channels are opening up and there's more places to find books? Or do we see a reduction market where things are disappearing? Right now, it's kind of a mixed bag, but by and large, we're in a reduction market. If you go classic MBA, even though the numbers are increasing, distribution is by and large shrinking. Digital hasn't figured itself out yet. And the only positive is that you do have Kickstarter, you have Zoop, you have Indiegogo, you have a Kickstarter, you have a crowdfunded model that's allowing books to come out the door. But the negatives outweigh the positives in this area. Again, this is my criteria. And I could go on with a number of other factors here. What's the relative health of these companies? If a new comic company comes up, what's the relative chance it is successful and is able to be cash flow positive and continue to pay? Most comic companies do not succeed. Where is the general money coming from? Is it coming from overseas imports? Is it coming from big conglomerates like a Scholastic? Is it coming from incumbents like a Marvel and DC? These are all factors to tell you, is a comic industry healthy or not? In my book, the way I would describe the comic industry is plenty of nascent opportunity, very little capitalization on that opportunity. By and large, most people inside of comics are struggling to have a stable job. And most people in comics are, there is not long-term revenue potential with small companies. Most small companies are going to either plateau out at a very low market cap or fail. Now, here's the important part. Two very important, everything I just said. Number one, a lot of people get into this argument of, is a comic industry successful or is it dying? For one reason. Not to be honest about what's going on, but to shit on the other side. Bluntly, that's why they do it. Let's just be honest with ourselves. There's a bunch of people and they are jerks, and so I'm going to make fun of the industry or make fun of the people who are saying it's dying, because that is my method of crapping on the group that I don't like. And again, you can entertain yourself any way you like, but be honest about what you're doing. That is what is going on. When I see people like, hey, look at all the man babies saying the comic industry is dying, what you really want to do is make fun of man babies. You're not giving a statement pro or con about comics. So in my mind, cut out the middleman. Just go direct with your insult, saying, you know what, you're fat, you're dumb. Just call it what it is. Why are we wrapping this argument into a financial analysis when the people who are making these arguments clearly have no idea what they're talking about? So just go with the insult. Like, hey, dumbass with the anime avatar that is annoying me. You're a loser and you're never going to get laid, and piss off. Like, just whatever. I long for the classic days when people would just insult you to your face with what they intended. Learn from Mumbles. Do what Mumbles does. Anyway, but the other piece is, who cares? Oh my God, what a worthless argument. It blows my mind. And again, everybody who gets involved in this is irritating at various stages, but comic creators, for the love of God, especially if you're one of the lucky ones that has a job, what are you doing getting involved in this argument? What's the point? Who are you trying to convince? Write your comic. You got a contract. Be happy. What do you like? Again, play this out. What do you think is going to happen when you win? Like, aha! Do you think that is the man baby one day on Twitter going to wake up and go, "My God, I've ruined my life. I am a man child, and I have to admit that the comic industry is healthy as it's ever been." And like, what is the point? You're just making noise. There's no value in this argument at all. Unless you are doing something, you're just wasting time because there's no way to win this argument unless you start to get specific about what you mean. Like for me, I can say, look, I don't think the comic industry is healthy because there's too many people who inside of it have no job security and have to beg to get, basic health care. That's my definition. That's what I'm talking about. That's my concern with comics. It has nothing to do with Democrats, Republicans, Trump, any of that. It has to do with, I think, in an industry, when there's a profession, if people are working in this industry and hold that profession, it is a reasonable expectation that if they get sick and they are doing their job well, they should be able to afford basic, health care. If they can't, something is amiss. Construction, people who are standing on the streets with a little sign saying slow or fast, they if they break an arm, they're able to go get medical treatment, and they may have to pay some stuff out of pocket, may be a little painful, but generally, you do not see a bunch of construction workers having to do GoFundMe's because their apartment flooded. I'm like, you go down the list. There are healthy industries, unhealthy industries. I think big aspects of the comic industry is unhealthy, and I think that protesting that because you want to own the internet trolls, 40-something-year-old men, I suppose, is like you're not helping yourself in that model at all. At that point, to me, unfortunately, when I see dialogue like that, and I'd love to talk to Ron Mars again. I had a wonderful time with interviewing him, and I love his Silver Surfer book right now. I think it's great. It's a good throwback. He's doing a bang up job. Great stuff. I would love to ask him, like, what to me, when I see those kinds of arguments back and forth, it becomes another reason why I think the comic industry isn't doing well. Because industries that are doing well, technology, for example, you do not see a bunch of engineers from Amazon or Microsoft on Twitter talking about how the people who say that, you don't see like an Amazon coder going, oh, look at all the people who say coding is a dead end job. Well, shows them because I just bought a Tesla. Like, you don't see that. And why you don't see that is that people who are working in that industry are just making money and comfortable. And so when I see a bunch of people who are like have the time in their day to go out and screw around on Twitter, it makes me think that is not a healthy industry, because a healthy, successful, driving industry, people would not, they wouldn't have the time to fart around with this kind of nonsense. It becomes, another thing that makes me nervous. If I'm an investor and I'm looking to bring money in, and I look at people who represent that industry and they're having this kind of argument, I'm like, ooh, I get very nervous about my investment. That's my point. Now, again, this is my criteria. You can have whatever the hell you want, and that's the magic of freedom in America and everything else. The pointless aspect to this argument, and I think the true lens at which you should look at the comic industry in is, yes, there's a lot of consumers out there with dollars in hand ready to buy your product. That Comics Beat article and everything you're seeing proves that market interest is present. Market interest is there. If you put out a product, somebody is ready to buy it. I think that is an absolute fact. So if you are looking at comics and you're going, the comic industry is dying, that's probably my biggest counter argument to you, to say it's clearly not dying because people want to spend money in that market. Manga has gotten successful as an import product because there is a huge number of people who have cash who are ready to put money into that product. So if I was an investor looking at comics in the pro and the cons category, in the pro category would be There is clearly market demand. There are clearly customers that want to spend money. There's clear interest of people to buy, in many cases, exorbitant product at high prices to be in this market. That's no, I can't. So I can't say the comic industry is failing when there is a market ready and willing to buy its product. However, when I get to the execution side, I see a lot of people who are in the industry who can't make ends meet. I see a lot of people who are wasting their time fucking around on Twitter. And I see a publishing strategy that increasingly feels predatory and destructive. What I mean by that is increasingly reliant on variant schemes and pricing models that are largely not bringing in new consumers. So that would be the interesting problem is you've got a lot of people who want to buy the product, and you have an industry that does not seem to be executing on that. That's how you should look at it. Anyway, it's all kind of silly. This stuff is silly. I don't know. That's my view. Let me know what you think. Comments, welcome. Thanks for listening.